probably lavished more on my last one I call Precious Life, because she was my youngest, and she always had a way of making me laugh. I remember one time I had found a shawl that somebody had sent me from England, actually. And I'd put it on my shoulders. I didn't know what to do with it. I was kind of whirled around like this, put it on and stuff, and she was doing a thing. And that night we had guests, and I like to remain dignified. And as I'm getting ready to eat after the blessing, my darling little Precious Life comes and puts the shawl upon my shoulder and says, "Daddy, show them how you can dance." And I'm going, no. But she was so full of life and always shocked me. And what a wondrous girl that she was. And I remember how brave she was. And First Manassas, a little 14-year-old out there, tending to the wounded that came in right beside of Agnes. My goodness. Showed me she had tenacity. And I remember in '68 when she became sick with typhoid fever, I refused to leave her side. I slept beside of her on the floor, and I held her hand, because it was tradition in our house that when I fell asleep on my afternoon naps that I did every afternoon in my chair, she'd be there holding my hand, patting on it. And when I wake up, she'd still be there. But when she woke up from that dreaded disease, I was there. And on September 28th, 1870, till October 12th, 1870, she was by my side, always rubbing and patting my hand, letting me know that her precious life was there beside me. What a wonderful woman. Wonderful girl. What a wonderful legacy to leave your children and knowing they're happy. There were other ladies. I have a couple, if I may. One in particular was my mother-in-law. I yielded no man in my affection for that woman. In fact, upon her death in '53, me and my oldest daughter were baptized and recommitted ourselves to Christ, because of her piousness. It was her work was instrumental in getting George Washington Custis, her husband, to free the slaves of Arlington with an education. She did not like slavery. She did not want to own a slave. And she persisted in removing that title. No, she did not see it. 5 years after my father-in-law's death, 4 days before the great Emancipation Proclamation that freed, how many slaves, sir? No slaves. I had the honor of freeing the last slave, and there's coming some work, last slave of Arlington, with an education. And when the Emancipation came, I paid William McLeod. Read his book, you'll see. William McLeod, Old Perry and all them, I paid them a fair salary for the work that they did for me. But I always give her credit. Miss Custis. And there's two others I think of that came to my mind, one being Old Ma. You say Old Ma was quite a character. She'd been there ever since I had started going to court. She had been with my marriage. And she was nanny of my children. And she was quite aged. And I remember her saying a lot of times that she actually had belonged to Martha and George Washington. And she said that Martha is the dearest thing, but that old cantankerous Marsh George, said there's sometimes him and I just don't scat. So she had quite a spirit about her. When she scolded my children, they knew Nanny spoke. And they didn't run to Mama. They ran from Nanny. But I remember receiving a letter, I believe it was in beginning of '62, I'm not sure. But I remember receiving one from Marquis Williams, our girl that was my 5th daughter. Stayed in Old Ma had died, and how badly she wanted to go to the grave, and went up there, and she wrote about the horrors that were taking place in Arlington and the degradation of the land. And that reminds me of my last one I wanted to tell you about. A young one about the age of my darling precious life. Her name was Sarah, and she was a housemaid, young, fully trained. And I remember I had a liking to this child because she loved my darling precious life so well. And also there was a young man by the name of Harry Washington Gray that was about the age of my children. He was always helping them plant and stuff, and those two had formed a bond. But I remember, does your wife do this? Gentlemen, we celebrated the 12 days of Christmas. Started with the burning of the Yuletide log, all the way up to that particular 28th day. And we would begin on the 17th of December. Well, each time we'd have different guests in, and one day was for the cooks, the servants, and the slaves, and we would give things. And I'd wait the last minute to give Sarah something, and I would take it and hide it behind my back and say, Miss Sarah, and she'd come up always looking at me, had that beautiful curly hair, beautiful child, and I would pull it out and it'd be a piece of coke. She'd go, Marsh, then I'd go get the doll that I gave her. That's about the same one that my darling little precious life Millie had, and they'd go out and play. You know what that child did? And those people came in and illegally took my wife's house. And they started going through grabbing stuff that didn't belong to them. Grabbing things. It was that young child who'd get up right in their face and say, sir, you cannot have that. That belonged to Marsh Washington. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. And she would take it at the peril of her life and put them over. And those things that she preserved are still seen this day in Smithsonian. Tenacity, a spirit. You ladies have it. It has been passed down from generation to generation. And I pray to God there does not come a time when there is not a UDC lady to stand up and say, that's my flag that you're spitting upon. Or OCR, or Scarlet Rose, or just anybody of the South that loves their heritage that will say, enough. We are from a fine lineage, an honorable lineage, a proud lineage. For you see, I am nothing more than a voice of the past, speaking to the voice of tomorrow, begging you, pleading with you to pass the torch so that this generation and all generations to come can walk side by side proudly with their brothers and sisters, realizing that we have a common bond of love as Southern patriots and compatriots. There's a wonderful story, and I will end on this. I found him when I went to Washington College. His name was John Chavis. He's a free person of color. He fought at the Revolutionary War. And when he fought with such tenacity and such bravery that he was given a scholarship at Washington College. And he went on and he formed churches in North Carolina and other areas of the South for both black and white. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Can we not do the same? This is for heritage. Never hate. If there comes a time that this jacket represents hate, I will be the first to take it off. Never wear again. But that day will never come, because I leave it in your capable hands of preserving our history and our heritage. God bless you, and God bless the South. Ladies and gentlemen, I salute you.
Sir.
Thank you.